And speaking of that team you just mentioned, let's jump into McKeesport a little bit now. McKeesport, they're one of the teams where last season was really a 2-game season, right? At the beginning of the season, that 20-0 loss to Bell Vernon. Then at the end of the season, a 20-14 upset at Thomas Jefferson. And you know what? That's a thing that as tough of a loss in the playoffs as Plum was, that's something you cannot take away from the McKeesport Tigers. Beating Thomas Jefferson in Jefferson Hills doesn't happen that often. I mean, I'm sure you can say that for certain, but that game, is that going to inspire the McKeesport Tigers to maybe take the next step here in 4A? I know Billy has McKeesport in the top 10 in the state in 4A, and that just says a lot about how good this conference is as far as the top end talent. But what is your opinion on that victory in 2020, and could it give them a little bit of momentum here?
Yeah, for sure. Whenever you beat the state champion, and that happened to be the state champion's only loss, that's definitely a success. I know you lost the next week in the playoffs to Plum. Now, Plum was a very good football team last year. Let's not forget, Plum gave it all they had against TJ in the WPIL semifinals as well. Looking at last year, though, it was really weird for McKeesport. Now, they came out and they lost 20-0 to Bell Vernon. Then they rolled against Newcastle. Then they only beat Trinity by 3 points at McKeesport. And then they take care of business at Ringgold. But then against West Mifflin, they only beat West Mifflin by 5. Laurel Highlands thought they'd roll them, only beat them by 15. And then they beat TJ. It's like, what? And their schedule this year at non-conference is hard. They got a couple 5A schools off the bat. Baldwin's 6A. Opening the season up, then Woodland Hills. That won't be a tough game. Woodland Hills is a dark horse in 5A. At Armstrong should be a win. Then they have Canisius, New York, or however you pronounce that.
Canisius.
Yeah, what he said. Yeah, Canisius, New York. Know nothing about them, but I'm sure that's a tough game if they're willing to drive all the way to McKeesport, Pennsylvania. And then they finally get into their conference play at Trinity, Ringgold, West Mifflin. It's easy to start. And then you look starting October 15th when the real season begins at Laurel Highlands, TJ rematch, and at Bell Vernon. Definitely doesn't end easy for the Tigers, but they do have a good bit coming back that could make it easy. Looking at quarterback, Caleb Reese, he's a big one. Jamil Perryman's going to be a big part of this team. Bobby Boyd. I'm forgetting someone. He's escaping my mind. That's awful.
Kanye
Thompson, thank you. He was escaping my mind. I knew. But yeah, Kanye Thompson, he's going to be a big part as well. Now they lost guy. I know Saad Robinson. He's playing at Notre Dame College, not Notre Dame the Fighting Irish, but Notre Dame College, the Falcons at Division II level, who are their powerhouse in their own right out of the Mountain East Conference, and Terrence Glenn as well. They need to replace him, but I think this McKeesport team, their ranking in the top 10 of the state, is for good reason. I don't think that that ranking is out of left field, surprise. So. I think this season again for McKeesport is going to be a 2-game season, and it's going to be back-to-back weeks, October 22nd and October 29th.
Yeah, basically the whole season is just preparing for those 2 games for this team. I mean, and just to go back to last season, the offense was not good against lower tier teams last season. I mean, they were able to pull out wins, but that triple option was not as effective until they found their quarterback in Caleb Reese, and that was a big reason why they ended up winning that Thomas Jefferson game, was his tenacity in the pocket, his ability to really just drive through guys, to break through tackles. I mean, Caleb Rice is going to be an offensive threat, especially in the run game. And then, speaking of the run game, you're looking at the guys they're bringing back. Yes, they lose Asad Robinson. Yes, they lose Terrence Glenn. And Terrence Glenn, I'd argue, is probably the worst of those losses, but just because he has such a unique skill set that they're going to have trouble replacing. But look at the guys that got coming back. Keyshawn Humphreys, Jamil Perryman, Bobby Boyd, and of course, Kanye Thompson. All those kind of wingback roles, those guys that'll beat you on the outside, that's a skill set that you're not going to find anywhere else in this conference. So, just speak a little bit about how this backfield might be a little bit better, even though they lost those 2 guys.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll necessarily be better. Terrence Glenn was a very unique individual at that fullback position. I don't know if I'd ever really consider him a fullback, but in their offense, he was. And he, I mean, he would leave people. And Asad Robinson, um, he was a very unique talent. Look, he was a running back there, and he's going to college to play wide receiver. But they bring back Honey Thompson. That's going to be huge. Bobby Boyd, Jamil Perryman. This McKeesport team's still going to be very good. Now it's just if they can get over and being one of the top teams in this conference and beating a TJ again and getting over Bell Vernon, um, and winning this conference.
Yeah, and you have the benefit as well of playing those games at the end of the year. So, losing Terrence Glenn isn't that big of a loss when you've found that guy heading into week 9. So, or week 8, I guess. Game 9, week 8. Anyway, McKeesport is definitely going to be in the mix. An exciting team. We're ecstatic that we get to cover them again. I mean, what a great football environment covering the Tigers.